Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Talent Foundry podcast. We are so excited to be coming to you again on this amazing day to share another founder story. One of the things that we are most excited about over here at the Talent Foundry at UCSD is that we get to highlight community founders who are doing extraordinary work within the community and contributing to a workforce ecosystem that will continue to be sustainable and thriving. But before we jump into our amazing founder today, I just want to highlight a little bit about the Talent Foundry. If you all are unaware of us, we are located at UCSD in the Office of Innovation. Myself, Christiana Russell, and David Favela oversee the program, and we work with extraordinary founders that are based in San Diego, working at various industries, and the focal point is oftentimes tethered back to some type of impact in the community, but it doesn't have to be. But what we do ask is that there is some type of tech component to your business. If this sounds like something that you're interested in learning more about, you can find us at talentfoundry.ucsd.edu. Again, that's talentfoundry.ucsd.edu. All right. Well, I am so excited to have this amazing, incredible, talented founder sitting in front of me. Andrea, welcome to the Talent Foundry podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me. Big fan of Talent Foundry.
Oh, let me tell you, we're a huge fan of yours. And I'm so excited because I know that we had been planning this for quite some time, but could never get our schedule together. And finally, we've been able to connect and have this amazing conversation about your journey and your business and where you are, where you're going, and your call to action. So let's just jump right into it. So tell me a little bit about, or tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So my name is Annie Brown, and I am the founder of Reliabl. Reliabl is a data annotation software. So it actually came out of a social media project that I was working on, where we were building more ethical social media practices, and we grew to about 50,000 followers, and or 50,000 users. And at that point, the platform needed moderation. So we started looking for third-party moderation services, third-party data annotation services. And we found that none of the available softwares fit with our platform's values, those values being that we want to eliminate moderation bias, or at least reduce it. We want to center the voices and experiences of historically marginalized communities on our platform. And we found that when we were thinking of working with those third-party systems, that because of the way they're set up, which is typically top-down, so a moderator will start annotating the data, start saying, okay, this image is this, this, and this, with no context or understanding for what the community is or does.
We see that a lot happening, don't we?
Yes, in so many things. And I think the AI discussion, so data annotation is crucial to AI because the data annotation is what trains those models. And so what we found is, okay, we built this on our social media platform where the community is actually like labeling their own data, has ownership of their data. And from there, Reliabl was born because we found that there were a lot of other emerging social media networks, as well as data-driven businesses who also were having issues with bias in their systems, and they didn't quite understand why. And it's because they were using top-down third-party data annotation systems. So that's the solution we're providing. Me, I'm actually a visiting scholar and entrepreneur in residence at UC San Diego with the Office of Innovation and Commercialization. And currently, I'm actually temporarily in San Francisco participating in Wharton's VIPX Accelerator program.
Yay! That is so huge. We're so excited for you. Congratulations.
It's been great. It's been great to sort of dive into the the San Francisco experience a little bit. I miss San Diego though.
Right, right. Yeah. And of course, we miss you as well. What made you actually go into this space? Like, is this something that you've always wanted to, I guess, kind of unpack and create equity in? Or, like, what directed you in this space?
Yeah, well, I've always had an interest in media. My
Ah,
undergraduate academic studies was in gender studies and history, and my focus there was actually on media and specifically the history of media from the perspective of marginalized groups. So I did my
ah,
undergraduate thesis on Cosmopolitan magazine and understanding how, while a media form can have very like positive feminist messages, it also, due to the practices and due to the way that the company was foundationally built and the company's values, it also had very detrimental impacts on women's health globally and women's
mm-hmm,
mental health globally. And while I was studying media, I developed Lips as a zine, so an independent campus publication. And I got really interested in, I guess, free speech issues because of that. A lot of the content in our zine was around the LGBTQ community. I went to college in Southern Virginia, and so as you can imagine, there was some pushback on that publication.
just a little.
And I started like it sort of opened my eyes to the
Yeah.
way that, you know, systems of power at that time, the administration of the college, um, tried to silence
Mm,
marginalized groups. And so that sort of stayed with me after college when I went into content marketing, creator economy work, and I went through YC. I joined a company right before they joined YC, so I was able to go through that process really early, the startup sort of growth process. And I think in that process, I saw that with the explosion of social media, there was a
yeah.
need for more diverse voices. When I was in YC with this team, there weren't a lot of women founders in that cohort, and so that was a motivation I had too. And then, creating Lips as a social media platform, we had a lot of pushback. And I think, for me, it's getting to the bottom. It's not just saying like, it needs to be better. For me, it was always trying to understand, okay, what is the exact problem and how can we actually create a solution that addresses this problem? Because I think when it comes to social issues, when it comes to issues of equality, I think
Yeah.
the easy way out is a lot of times saying, oh, it's too big a problem to fix. It's just the way it is. And I've never been able to accept that, I guess. And so for me, just keeping pushing and using my understanding of technology and AI to develop and design solutions that work for marginalized communities and give them the ability to push back against powers that are trying to silence them.
I really appreciate what you're sharing as to the passion behind why you're doing what you're doing. Similarly, in my undergrad, I took a class where I did women's study, and it was alarming at how there's all these subliminal messages about
Mm-hmm.
women that are hidden in everyday ads. I mean, and now that I guess I'm a little bit more sophisticated with the eye because of how I was taught to look at things and question back. Now, I see it more readily than before. It was just, oh, it's just a commercial. Oh, it's just an ad. Oh, it's just, but then once you started to go deeper into the hidden messages, you're blown away because you're like, oh my God, I was a kid watching this, and so I just wanted to share that I appreciate that you took that and didn't just stay with the frustration of, oh, this sucks that this is the way things are, and decided to do something yourself with your business and create a space where you are now providing more equity and a diverse voice, as you put it, in this space that then I think mirrors more balance in this space as opposed to just kind of this one linear. Now, as we're talking about this, in theory, this sounds really great, but media is a beast. How does Andrea's brand, your company, Reliabl, like break into this beast of, because most media, isn't it ran by like four groups, like four main individuals?
Yeah, I mean, media as a whole is the way it is because it is monopolized.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was a lot of pushback we had on when we were first launching a social media platform because, I was saying, well, it'll never be as big as Instagram. Instagram's already got the market. And this was even before TikTok came out, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so we sort of saw this and we said, well, for us, it doesn't have to be about like you can disrupt an industry without taking away all the users because I think the idea is that the way it was for Lips is that there are people who need this space and they need to know that they have a part of the internet that is safe for them. And so that was what our goal was for Lips. It was essentially like just build this space that's safe for this community. Now on a larger scale, and that's sort of where Reliabl comes in, it goes beyond just building that one social media competitor and instead taking what we've learned and what we've experimented on in the Lips community and then bringing that out broadly. So sort of the way that we're starting is working with alternative media or alternative social media platforms,
Mm-hmm.
which surprisingly there's a huge number now coming out because
Oh,
Gen
really?
Z does not necessarily accept the way things are on these social media platforms. I
Yeah.
think there's been so much negative press that I believe that Instagram, TikTok, they felt that, oh, well, it's negative press, but we're big enough, so it doesn't really matter. But to a lot of these communities, yes, they might still use that platform, but they're also going to use some alternatives that don't harm their mental health, that give back to the community, that have some
Yeah.
values that align with theirs. So that's where we sort of fit in, at least at first, is helping to support these social media platforms in aligning with their values. Because when you're growing and then you start, using the same moderation systems that Instagram or Facebook are using,
Mm-hmm.
then that sort of takes away from everything you've built. So providing that solution. But then what we're hoping to do is by proving out this solution and actually proving that not only does it align with these companies' values, but then these platforms are actually getting more accurate data because the community is a part of the labeling process. Then once we prove that through those things and actually also studies that we're doing with UCSD to demonstrate that accuracy, then we can start talking to these larger media companies and showing that it's not just about social justice, which they should, care about, but it's also about the bottom line and about the accuracy of their data.
Yeah. So, how do you go about kind of creating the space where you can do your B2B? Do you start off with that research conversation that leads into impacting the finances? Like how have you been able to find
Mm.
some kind of success in this area?
Yeah, so I think one thing that's been big for us is, and always through everything I've done as an entrepreneur, is trying to give back first. And so, one thing that we're offering right now, and to any listeners who have a social media platform or have a data driven business and are wondering how marginalized groups are being impacted by the way that they approach data, we are offering free content moderation and data annotation consultations. So essentially, you can come to me, you can come to Reliabl, and we will look at what you are doing, and we will let you know, like, okay, here's where marginalized groups might be being impacted by the way that you're approaching moderation. Here's where your data probably isn't so accurate because you've got this very niche type of data, and you're having this large third-party data platform
Mm-hmm.
labeling it, even though they don't really have an understanding of that niche. So we can go through and sort of talk through that, and then present them with alternatives, Reliabl being one, but then also just all of our experience in content moderation, in algorithmic bias, and talk to them about how that's going, and then also show them the research of what we've done with Reliabl as far as comparing Reliabl's data annotation to a third party. But for us, I think right now it's not so much about it's not so much about, okay, you have to use Reliabl, but I think the first step for us is providing a service to these social media companies that and data driven companies that show that, like, there are alternatives.
Yeah.
Again, it's not just, oh, this is just the way it is, it has to be this way. Kind of opening up people's minds to that you have to start understanding this if you're going to stay ahead of the curve, because like this bias, this way that we're approaching moderation and annotation right now isn't going to be sustainable for upcoming generations.
So basically, you're like saving people potential lawsuits as well, because
Yes.
when you think about the work that you're doing, it's some of it obviously will be intervention, but I hear prevention
Oh,
as you're
yeah.
talking about this.
A lot of prevention, and there's a lot of regulation that we're assisting with. So right now in California and in the EU, there's regulation coming up around moderation transparency
Mm-hmm.
and how you report that. And so that's currently only for major companies. So I think you have to have some ridiculous number of users. However, as that gets farther and farther, that's going to become regulation and the standard for these smaller companies as well. And also these smaller companies, if they want to get to that level, they're going to
Yeah.
have to build that foundation. So yeah, understanding how you fit in and how you're working with these moderation companies. And one thing we actually are talking to quite a few companies about right now is that a lot of companies are struggling to get to launch because every time they test their product, there's some sort of bias that comes up, or they're afraid that maybe there's a bias they didn't see. And they're wondering why. They're like, well, we have this diverse data set, but we don't understand why
Mm-hmm.
bias is still coming through, like, that we have racist or sexist outputs. And for us, we can help identify that maybe data annotation might be part of the core issue that they're not seeing, and how to actually resolve that by bringing their community in, which will resolve their problem, and it'll also build community trust in the platform because the community will feel like it has more ownership over the whole process.
Wow. I mean, as you're talking, I definitely can see so many different ways that this would be valuable. And, so, shifting a little bit, talk to us a little bit about like the journey for you as a founder, as you're building this company and you're recognizing there's a B2B experience and opportunity here, but also a B2C as
Mm-hmm.
well. And then as you were talking, I was thinking about the political component as well. I'm thinking there are some states that may see Reliable as a viable option to bring in to help with regulation working together. But talk to me a little bit about what the startup journey has been like for you as you're building this. Again, I know it's been uphill battle because it's the media industry, but just your personal journey. How have you had the fortitude to keep going in spite of challenges that you might come up against?
Yeah, so, you know, I think I'm like a lot of founders in that I came into the startup world and without a network, without
Mm.
my own, you know, financial capital, you know,
Mm-hmm.
coming in it pretty much, you know, working a full-time job as a marketer and then trying to um, do this on the side. And, you know, for me, I didn't have the funds to put myself through a master's computer science program or a MBA program. So I kind of had to learn quite a bit of it on the fly. I'm lucky now in that, you know, since I started this journey, I have made connections that have helped me now get, you know, into the Wharton program, and I'm doing a Stanford program in the summer. So it's like I'm getting that formal training now, and those like sort of stamps that sometimes you need to
Right.
get validated in the startup world. But
Yeah.
that was the hardest part for me, I think, was coming from this place of you hear a lot about startups and you hear a lot about these successful startups, but no one ever tells you that a lot of those successful startups started with their own capital. They started
Yeah.
with their own connections. And so you can be very hard on yourself, I think, sometimes when things don't go as quickly as maybe other people in your network that you see. And I think I think one of the things I've learned is to understand that there's a lot of different forces working all at once. And one of those forces being bias in the industry as well against women, against non-binary, against LGBT groups, against people of color. And if you fall into any of those historically marginalized categories, not only are you set back a little bit because you don't have the network, but you're set back a little bit because of the bias. And I think for me, I know that a lot of people when I started being in the startup world,
Yeah.
um, didn't like to talk about that. And if I brought it up, I was like, it was seen that I was like making excuses or something like that. And I didn't see that way at all, because for me, it was a way of recognizing
Yeah.
something that was happening, and it was just being honest. I had, you know, several very straightforward experiences, not, you know, like, oh, maybe there's some bias there, just like, you know, very straightforward sexism.
Yeah.
And for those experiences, that was very eye opening, because I think there's something about the startup world. I think it's because this is just my theory, but I think because a lot of it and a lot of the investment is based on this idea of like a gut instinct.
Mm.
Like there's not a lot of regulation. You know, when I go for a job, you see that little thing on the bottom that says we're an equal opportunity
Yeah.
hirer. You don't
Right.
see on VC pages any sort of regulation or anything that says we're an equal opportunity investor, because they're not. And
Right.
so they can say, oh, this was my gut decision, and not have to have there's nothing in place that forces investors to really examine their own bias.
Yeah.
Now, that all being said, I was very lucky to come across several communities that were openly talking about biases and challenges, and founders coming from, you know, not wealthy backgrounds. And one of those was at Astra Ventures. That was a huge, they're based in San Diego,
Mm-hmm.
Sylvia Ma,
Yeah.
Stella Co, Talent Foundry. So like these types of groups have been really helpful for me, because it gives you a bit of a leg up as far as helping you
Yes.
get that network that you didn't have before, which is so crucial in the startup world, and in the business world. And then it also just, it's been really nice connecting with other diverse founders, because you have a very different journey than a white, straight, heterosexual, you know, a white, straight, cis male
Yeah.
going through the startup journey.
Yeah.
And I've seen that because, you know, I'll go to a talk and they'll be talking to that audience, and a lot of the advice that they share doesn't necessarily apply to me.
Mm.
And so getting that perspective, putting myself in those communities has been lovely for me. I mean, I made a lot of friends that way, and yeah, I've enjoyed the journey a lot more once I found those communities.
You've hit on so many important topics, and one of the things that really stuck out to me is to find yourself engaged in a community that's going to help keep you on track, not just accountability wise, but I think
Mhm.
your mindset, because it's so challenging to get caught up in the day-to-day grind of the building and sometimes lose yourself in it, or you're constantly overthinking. And so I appreciate you sharing the value of your network and growing your network and starting locally and just kind of putting yourself in spaces, it just testing out the waters. It might not be the right room for you, but you may meet one person in there. I know that was my journey when I started out several years ago. With my own business and with my business partner, we would just put ourselves in spaces, and sometimes we would look up and find someone, and it was like, wow, that was so great. And other times it was just a learning experience. And it's like, okay, this is not your group, but there are some great takeaways from here. So I appreciate you saying that. And shout out to Talent Foundry. What?
Yeah, well,
Um,
honestly, like just having that, like, group to bounce ideas off of, but then also
yeah,
you can share, like, oh, like I went into this investor meeting and like I could really, feel like, the discrimination, or here's where the discrimination
yeah,
manifested, and not feel okay talking about that in
yeah,
a space is really nice too. So Talent Foundry has all of that in
yeah.
one.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the major focal points when, 2 years ago when I was writing this grant with the intention of creating something based on the vision that UCSD had, wanted to put together. And it was, how do you hold space, safe space for those in the community that's building extraordinary businesses, but also are facing unnecessary biases that sometimes, to your point, are consciously not there. So, in wrapping up, what would you say is the call to action for those that would be listening today for some of the wisdom that you've shared, or for Reliable, the business?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing, if there's founders listening, I think a key point is don't be too hard on yourself. There's a lot of things at play. It's not just you. That was a big thing I learned. So I'd say that would be a call to action. I also think, if you're an investor, or if you're someone in the network, in that founder community network. Going to these groups that have these diverse founders, being a mentor,
Yeah,
talking to the folks that lead the groups, and learning how you can get more involved, and start to understand the challenges that marginalized founders face, I think is super important. For Reliable, if you are a alternative social media platform, or if you have a platform with user generated content, or you have a company that's got a lot of data and you're not quite sure how to afford to annotate it, please get in touch. We are offering those free consultations to help you understand how to reduce bias, improve accuracy, and reduce costs. And also just looking to grow our community, and getting feedback on what we're building.
fantastic. So, I am so excited for all that you have already accomplished and all that's coming. And you just in passing made the comment about getting in the Stanford program. I'm just like, can we just shout that out? You got into the Stanford program, right?
Yeah, at Stanford Ignite, I will be starting this summer, so I guess end of June. And it's really a great program for honing entrepreneurship skills. It's basically an accelerated MBA, but then you're also working on your startup. So yeah, I'm very excited about it. I get to be on the Stanford campus, get to know people there, and Stanford is doing some great research on moderation. So I'm hoping to connect with folks there and bring them into some of the research we're doing at UCSD.
Yeah. And, for those that you're listening, what I think Andrea has really done a great job of sharing is how she's built on every opportunity that was put in front of her. And that's one of the key takeaways for me is that when a door opens, walk through it and then just build from there and just keep going. Andrea, thank you so much for taking out the time to connect with us today. Can you tell the people where they can find you?
Yes, you can reach me at Andrea at reliable.ai. And then our website is reliable.ai.
Fantastic. And if you want to connect with us over here at the Talent Foundry, you can reach us at talentfoundry.ucsd.edu. Again, that's talentfoundry.ucsd.edu. Thank you again for tuning in to another episode of the Talent Foundry podcast. We are missing our David Favela today, but we definitely look forward to having him back soon. Andrea, thank you again for your time. We appreciate you. Congratulations again, and we look forward to more success stories coming out of your
Thank
business.
you so much. Looking forward to working more with Talent Foundry.
Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye,
All
y'all.
right, bye.
Recording stopped.
Yay!